This whole situation between Carlos Maza and Steven Crowder has more or less blown over, and we are currently looking at the aftermath. Many people are very displeased with how YouTube handled the dispute between the two, especially people on the right end of the political spectrum. These people claim that YouTube is violating free speech and that the corporation has bias against conservative content creators. At face value, these seem like very legitimate concerns here. YouTube does limit what their content creators can say, and conservative creators are penalized more than left-leaning ones. But maybe there's more to this beyond what meets the eye at first glance. Ordinarily, people have rights that protect them from other people or organizations enforcing their will on them. However, we regularly waive some of those rights in professional contexts. When working for Chick-fil-A, it is understood that employees waive away free speech and expression while working for the company. An employee is not free to talk about the closing protocols to non-employees. Employees cannot speak harshly about the company while on site, and employees must dress a certain way. Chick-fil-A employees can't even say, "You're welcome." They gotta say, "My pleasure." While you're on the clock, your employer owns your ass. This is a dynamic that most adults are familiar with, and I have yet to see any hashtags dedicated to critiquing this sort of censorship. But people seem to think that YouTube is somehow different. YouTube is a company, and just like any other company, YouTube sets professional standards. When a content creator decides to bring their work to YouTube to be published and possibly monetized, they must adhere to the terms of service. YouTube sets very clear community guidelines in hopes that every video will be advertiser friendly. This is how they make money. If YouTube becomes known as a site with a lot of nudity, gore, and hateful content, that can make the site less attractive to both advertisers and viewers, which translates into less money for the company. It is in the best interest of YouTube to make sure their content is as general and non-controversial as possible. So, saying that YouTube is violating free speech of content creators is at best a dubious claim. Whether or not you agree with the terms of service is another matter, but just because you don't like the terms does not mean free speech is being violated. You just don't like the terms. Are the terms biased against conservatives though? I would say so, but not simply because these creators are conservative. These creators are more likely to be penalized because there is a huge amount of cultural overlap with conservatism and belief in fucked up conspiracy theories that turn off advertisers. Sure, a lot of folks on the left believe that Bush did 9/11 and that vaccines will make your dick fly off, but none of these theories breed unwarranted distrust or animus towards anyone. Actually, it's pretty reasonable to distrust the government, and I personally wouldn't put it past the Bush administration to do some shit like blowing up the World Trade Center to gain support for a war. I would also say it's completely reasonable to distrust the pharmaceutical industry. But it's not okay to deny that the Holocaust or Sandy Hook shooting happened. That is just some bullshit. Holocaust denial is heavily grounded in anti-Semitism and feeds into the notion that Jewish people are sneaky fiends trying to control the public. The comment sections of Holocaust denial videos end up being cesspools of anti-Semitism. YouTube has very clear rules about conspiracy theories, ascribing evil, corrupt, or malicious intent to individuals or groups based on their membership to a set of listed identities and characteristics. YouTube understandably cracked down on these videos. Sandy Hook denial tends to be grounded in an anxiety that the government is coming for people's guns. The idea here is that the elitist liberal media is pushing fake news to sway public opinion in a way that will influence gun legislation. Now, there could be some truth to this claim, but I highly doubt it because gun purchases typically spike after reports of mass shootings, and excluding the banning of bump stocks, nothing really changes about gun legislation after these tragedies. It would actually make more sense if some liberal claimed that the gun manufacturers staged Sandy Hook to increase their sales or something. These are both pretty wild claims here, but at least the last one makes a little bit more sense. Now, there is nothing inherently wrong with making conspiracy videos based in questionable premises, but YouTube cracks down on these particular videos because they incite harassment towards people already dealing with the loss of a loved one. So now you may be asking yourself, if YouTube penalizes conservative creators more, doesn't that mean that there is a pro-liberal bias? Now, this is a perfectly valid question, but I would argue that's still not the case at all. This has nothing to do with ideology or politics. It's about money, period. YouTube couldn't give two shits about progressive politics. That was evident in the way they handled the whole Crowder and Maza situation. The Team YouTube account flat out said that Crowder's words were offensive, but they did not violate the terms of service. This is complete nonsense because Crowder did objectively use stereotypes that incited hatred, and Mazo was harassed and doxxed by Crowder's fans. He also violated the harassment and cyberbullying policies found in the community guidelines section of the Terms of Service. YouTube is willing to overlook Crowder's behavior because he has a decent-sized platform that generates revenue for the site. Why would they permanently demonetize an account that makes money? That is not at all in their best interest. They just temporarily demonetized Crowder, gave him an opportunity to reinstate his channel for monetization after removing the socialism is for figs t-shirts, and then they thoughtlessly casted their new hate speech algorithm so widely that creators who cover radical groups for educational purposes or even to express contempt for these groups were also affected. Meanwhile, Red Ice still has a video up that advocates for segregation.
It's always about non-whites being sent into white neighborhoods.
Yeah, YouTube does not care about progressive politics at all. The only thing that matters to YouTube is advertising dollars. If Red Ice wants to make a video about how the liberals want to destroy the purity of all white neighborhoods, YouTube will look for a way to capitalize on this as long as they don't use any racial slurs. If people complain about this content too much, they insist that the video somehow doesn't violate any policies. But hey, I'm sure they'll just slap some black guy on their logo for Juneteenth and everything will be fine somehow. The main takeaway of all this is one thing. Unless you work on the corporate end of YouTube, they don't care about you. Don't kid yourself. They have no liberal bias. It's just that the right wing seems to be home of race realism and Holocaust denial at the moment. That shit is repellent for advertisers and viewers who aren't dumb bigots. YouTube is just a businessman.